Welcome to EMAC Regional 2021 podcasts. The show is dedicated to present research results of Polish scientists as authors or co-authors of papers presented during the Regional Conference of European Marketing Academy. The regional conferences are aimed to attract researchers interested in marketing issues, in changing and growing markets, and regarding a regional perspective. The project has been supported by the Polish National Agency for Academic Exchange under the program Welcome to Poland. My guest is Dr. Piotr Kwiatek, co-author of paper presented during EMAC Regional 2021 conference. The paper under the title Dimensions of Value-Based Selling, the Impact on Company Performance. So thank you, Piotr, for agreeing to be a part of this project. Can we start with some basics? What is value-based selling?
Hello. First of all, thank you very much for having me. Value-based selling, we can say that this is simply selling based on value for and with a customer. This is not a new approach. It has been circulating for more than a decade, but it's actually the last decade that it really took off. So there are several different definitions of that, but this is, generally speaking, a sales approach that builds on identification, quantification, and communication of customer value. So I would say that this is very far-reaching and internally embedded in a company concept of co-creating value with a customer. So to put it simply, I would say quantifiable value for and with a customer.
Okay, and what was the main goal of your research?
We wanted to identify the dimensions that are actually appearing in the previous studies and verify to what extent different dimensions of value-based selling contribute to company performance, meaning the sales performance and the market performance. This was the main goal.
Okay, so and what was the method you have in your paper, used in your paper?
Well, actually, there were two parts of the study. The first part was the factor analysis to make sure that the factors or the dimensions that we identified from the previous studies actually hold grounds or are reliable. And the second was more based on modeling, predictive modeling, to verify the hypothesis that we formed of whether certain dimensions of value-based selling contribute more to sales versus market performance. So these were the method. This was a survey-based study with close to 150 Danish companies.
And what did you find?
Well, thank you for this question, because this is the most important element, we would say. And I would say I would start with something that may sound pretty obvious, but nevertheless, it appears to be a very important element, not only for value-based selling. So the dimension that contributes the most to market performance of a company is, top management priority. So when I was saying at the beginning, when you asked me the question, what actually value-based selling is, I also said that it is embedded within a company. But what we discovered is that actually this is the prioritizing of this value-based approach that makes it work. So this is what we discovered, and though it may sound like pretty obvious, we also had some follow-up discussions with managers. And they're saying, it's sometimes when we are on the job, it's so easy to forget if there is no top-down priority management of this value-based approach. So this was the first, the biggest contributor. The second is sales enablement. So I would say whether the systems and tools are in place to actually support salespeople and facilitate their work in co-creating the value with customers. And it has an impact both on the sales performance as well as the market performance. I should also note that in this kind of studies, the measures are relative. So both sales performance and market performance are actually identified as relative to competitors. And the reason for this approach is that when customers are evaluating competitive offers, they are actually comparing different suppliers. Because, well, I didn't mention it, but we are discussing the business markets context, so typical B2B. So these measures or our outcomes are actually relative outcomes. So not in the absolute sense, but comparing to competitors. And then the third contributor in terms of strength, both to sales performance and market performance, is, and again, it might not be a surprise, but I will still mention it, of course, it's sales training. Value-based selling is a very interesting concept. We may say broadly that it is linked with co-creating value, which sounds very, very ambiguous. So to put it in more practical terms, when we would think that company would like to increase sales, taking into account the current customers, so without acquiring new ones, then to make more sales, you have simply two possibilities: either to cross-sell, so the same customers are buying more of your products, or to go for upsell, which means, in simple words, that your current customers are buying more expensive products from your offer. The question is, why should they buy more expensive products from their offer? And the answer to this question, so the answer for upselling is actually whether they can see more value in purchasing more expensive products from your offering. And this is where actually a value-based selling plays its role.
Okay, you did your research in the context of B2B business. Do you think that your findings are also or could be implemented also in B2C context?
Well, it's a very interesting question, and thank you for this. To some extent, I would say yes. Obviously, I'm not able to say that we can just copy-paste it to consumer markets. But at the end of the day, also as consumers, we are spending our money based on value. So the question is, whether we should buy product A or brand A versus product B. And we make this decision, of course, taking into account many different factors. And sometimes it can be a habit. Sometimes it can be, some elements that are not just spark the idea to buy this product over the other. But usually we are taking this value concept into our consideration also in consumer markets. Whether these results are transferable, I would say, of course, it depends also what kind of consumer products are we discussing, whether it's a bar of chocolate, some consumables,
of course,
or whether we are going for some home appliances or stuff like that. However, I should mention that at least some of the companies that were in our sample, we were investigating the B2B part of this company. Though some of them were actually hybrid companies, so they were offering products to consumers, so they were marketing to consumers as well. But to make their products available to consumers, they actually had to sell first to different sorts of distributors or retailers, and this was the B2B element. So, and during these follow-up discussions, we also had this kind of questions that we asked the managers. Do they think that consumers are paying attention to the value, whether it makes sense on consumer markets? And they were saying, yes, of course, but they are calculating it, meaning consumers, in a bit different way.
Okay, thank you for the answer. Piotr, the research was conducted in Denmark among Danish companies. Do you see its usefulness also for researchers and practitioners in other countries?
Well, definitely yes, because I will try to support this definitely that I used. Some of these companies, for example, they have extensive business operations also in Poland and in other European countries, even beyond Europe as well. And these main processes, so buying and selling in business-to-business context, of course, it can differ to some extent in different cultural settings. But nevertheless, the specificity of making purchase decisions in business-to-business is very much alike around the world. How negotiations, for example, are carried out, of course, it's highly influenced by cultural context, but the way decisions are calculated or the kind of decisions are made, well, it doesn't differ that much. So I would say, well, I cannot guarantee that this is 100% transferable, but at least within the context of Europe, or, well, I should say like European Union, I would say that these results should hold. But of course, I would encourage fellow colleagues also to investigate it further.
Okay, somehow you have already mentioned about the significance of your research, but if you could emphasize, what is the significance of your research for the economy? Not for the some practitioners, but for the economy.
For the economy itself. So this is really a big question. And I would say like this, if there is more business being done, well, obviously there should be more taxes being paid. So for this would be important to economy. On the other hand, of course, if more B2B elements are being sold, it means that the investments are going up and the consumption is going up in the supply chain. So I would say this results, if we can improve selling, we not only selling and buying, of course, because, well, we cannot sell if somebody else is not buying. So if we can improve this, of course, there are effects for economy in terms, of taxes, and in terms of a better business climate, in terms of improved business indicators. So in a broader sense, I think that there are some elements that I would say link to benefiting the economy as such. But of course, it's too small of a research to say that it can have an impact of shaping, for example, the policies.
I really like your answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So what do you think is the most important message to come out of your research? The most important message?
The most important message that I would say would be like this. Value-based selling, first of all, is not for everybody. It's not for every type of company. It's not for every kind of business. Second, it's not for all the customers. You will always have customers that are more transactional oriented, more price oriented. But on the other hand, you will always find customers that are more prone to shaping the relationships and are more oriented towards value. The message is, if you can, or first of all, identify this type of customers and then build the whole culture within your company that starts with top management priority and includes these 9 dimensions that we investigated in the value-based selling, then you can really see the improvements in your sales performance and your market performance. So it was not maybe the shortest message that I can give, but I think this would be the underlying one.
Okay, so what are your research plans for the future? Do you have any research plans, further research plans connected to value-based selling?
Oh, yeah, definitely, yes. Thank you for asking me this. One of the projects that is currently ongoing is actually connected with your previous question. So whether these results would hold for different companies in a different sample. So we are planning on having a very similar study in Poland and in Germany to also verify different contexts and to see the potential of value-based selling in highly commoditized business to business. So what we are also interested in, because you see the basic idea of VBS and the authors of this whole concept, so it's mainly coming from Nordic countries, they are assuming that VBS is not for every company. It's not for everybody. It's for this kind of companies that are offering more complex solutions, more complex products. But as I mentioned, we could also see that even in transactional business to business, there is a potential to find segments of customers large enough that are prone to this value concept. So we want to see whether this kind of an approach can be used in highly commoditized markets and to what extent this would be a feasible approach from the business perspective, because the theory says, okay, in transactional markets, in highly commoditized markets, well, this is the price and availability of a product that matters the most. Okay, fine. But does it exclude the possibility that there are reasonably big segments of customers for value-based selling? So this is the follow-up that we want to introduce.
Thank you very much, Piotr, for the interview.
Thank you.
And very interesting findings. Thank you very much once again. And you are listening to EMAC Regional 2021 podcasts. And my guest was Dr. Piotr Kwiatek.
Thank you.
Thank you.